Hello friend, you found this video because you're feeling stuck in your career or your business. Things are just not moving forward or turning out the way you'd like, and you find yourself wondering, should I make a big change? Should I try something new? And yet every time you try to do so, you just can't get going. Today I'll share a story with you about one of my clients who was stuck in exactly this place and how we were able to get her out of planning and into motion. So much of what holds us back in our lives is our inability to act. We often get these big ideas about changing careers or finding a better job or maybe starting a business. And yet we can never really move forward with them. We get hung up in a cycle of planning and overthinking, and a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt creeps in. And ultimately, it stops us from taking the steps necessary to actually making these things a reality for ourselves. The good news is there is a way out of this. There is a way forward. And a lot of the self-help advice, the videos you may have watched, the various coaches and gurus out there in the world will give you some helpful tools and pieces to this, but many of them are really lacking the fundamental process to get from planning to motion or action. And so in the work that I do with people, this is what we really get to the root of. And I'll give you an example of a client of mine. She came to me last year, and she's someone who is she's kind of a multi-passionate person. She has a career mostly in graphic design and web design, also does more creative art as well, and has some other job skills that she's picked up and worked in some other jobs as well. And when she came to me, she really just kind of knew that she needed some sort of help, some sort of inspiration, or I hate to use the word guidance, but some direction in her life. And often when people like her come to me, they don't have a real strong sense of like, I'm trying to figure out X. So when I first sat down with her, her question to me was, I'm just trying to get an idea of what am I really doing. I've been out of work for a while, and I'm trying to find some employment that actually is satisfying to me, that will obviously pay the bills, but isn't doing something I really don't like doing, or is more aligned with kind of who I am, where I'm headed in life. At the same time, she's also wondering about things like her personal life, her romantic life. And she had been in a fairly significant relationship until recently, until that point, but had left that relationship. It had run its course. And so she's also confronting some feelings of loneliness and wanting love and intimacy and a strong, powerful relationship in her life as well. And that's really what she brought to me when I first met her and what she was trying to figure out. And through working with her, we started to sort of sort these things out. And already you can see here part of the problem, part of the issue that we all run into is that logically, when we're trying to solve a problem, our mind tries to compartmentalize everything. So we look at our work life, our career, or our business as a separate thing from our relationships, and also separate from our physical health and our emotional health and other things that are important pieces of our lives. And the mind is very good at doing this. It's sort of discerning and labeling and breaking everything down into nice little pieces. Now, that's really helpful when you are trying to, say, I don't know, build a rocket ship or do something very concrete, or even figure out how to sell a new product that you've created in your business, for example. It's very helpful and a very useful thing to do. But when we're looking at our lives from a bigger perspective, that compartmentalization actually fails us in a big way. The logical mind isn't alone sufficient to get us moving into the things that are really right for ourselves. really making those big decisions, especially when we're trying to create a big change or transformation in our life and become something that we really haven't been in the past. And so as I started talking to my client and working through this with her, we very quickly came to some understandings about what's going on in terms of both her professional life and her personal life. And very quickly, we could see through our first session together that her biggest focus at that time really needed to be her finding employment, finding meaningful work for herself. She was very much trapped in a cycle of obviously the need to make a living to sustain herself, but to do so in a way that wasn't soulless. That was something that she felt good about going to every day, something that really meant something to her, that was fulfilling to her beyond just the paycheck. And that was playing against these other feelings of wanting love, wanting to be desired and valued by another human being, and having that intimate connection with somebody. And so she was really going round and round with this. And so she would get into situations where she would apply for jobs that probably weren't really the best thing for her, the right fit for her. And often she wouldn't hear back, or when she would go to interviews and it would just be very half-hearted. You know, her passion and her soul wasn't really in it, because she's just trying to find work that seemed suitable and that had a certain pay grade for her. That would then interplay with this drive and desire to go find someone, find a partner. And so she was getting really torn between, like, sort of pulling away from her job search and really narrowing in on what she should be, the work that she should be looking for and how to find that. And sort of avoiding that for periods of time by being out in the world and really sort of searching for this new partner in her life. And so the final result was she wasn't really finding either. And we were able to help her get focused in on what's really going on. And a lot of what I identified with her was that most of this was through tarot readings and through some one-on-one coaching and conversation, that a lot of her worthiness, her sense of self-worth as a human being, was very much rooted in her ability to earn a living and be sustainable, and to be doing work that meant something to the world and that was meaningful for her. We decided, and we came to this idea that even though she was feeling lonely and wanting this connection, that right now the best thing for her to do to get some momentum going and get herself moving forward was to really focus on employment. And that the relationship piece would sort of fill itself in and the right person would come to her. But if she was going out into the world and trying to meet people from a place of, I'm not employed right now, I'm not feeling worthy and sustainable and just worthy as a human being, that she was going to attract relationships into her life that weren't the relationships she was looking for. And so we saw, really through the first couple times of working together, and she really got right with this, that I need to focus on this business piece. And we got a lot more clarity around that, around employment. And what we saw coming down the road for her was actually focusing more on finding some work that felt good to her, that may have been a little bit outside of what her typical employment is, outside of sort of her general career path. Because what she really needed in her career was to be moving into something that was more entrepreneurial, that was more of her own, and less of just working for an organization that could pay her a pile of money, to do something that she just wasn't as invested in, because it wasn't really her work. It wasn't her vision and goal. And so we identified a need of finding some employment, but something that wasn't so sort of soul crushing, and looking in places that really were more about the environment and the workplace being a place that she felt comfortable and valued and rewarded and belonging, more than Is this the exact amount of pay I need to make to pay my bills? Because as a graphic designer, as a web designer, and social media consultant, she has the ability to do freelance work, to work on her own quite a bit, but she never developed that into a full-time sustainable business for herself. And so over the course of a few months after this reading, and after we did some of this work together, some time went by, and we met up again going down the road. And she had found some work at that time, and she wasn't thrilled about it. She said, it pays pretty well, and I think this could, it was originally sort of a contract thing, but she thought it would develop more into a full-time gig. But it wasn't quite the right thing for her. So that was a step forward, and that she did find this job. But sure enough, about a month or two later, and after sort of working together some more, we really identified that this thing wasn't going to be the end all be all. And sure enough, what happened was a few months later, her contract ended, I believe, and they didn't want to go full time with this as a permanent thing for her. I think they decided to outsource it to someone else. Doesn't really matter, but it ended up not being the right fit. Shortly after that, she actually stepped into doing some design and social media work for a local establishment. It was the establishment that I first met her at. And it was the kind of place that socially she felt very comfortable. So it was a great environment for her. The pay wasn't exactly what she needed to make, but she was getting some side work, and that was also supplementing things. And she started feeling really good, at least about where she was and what she was doing. She kind of found herself a home in the workspace. And it was really great. And then not long after that, at this place, at this establishment, she found the person she was looking for. She found herself in a new relationship. She met this person, again, through this job that wasn't really on paper the exact sort of thing, the exact sort of job that she was expecting to be in or saw herself moving into. But nonetheless, that was exactly where she needed to be. And she's now in this very wonderful and very exciting relationship for her, and continuing to prosper and expanding her actual entrepreneurial efforts as well. So beyond having this steady job, she's starting to build more of her own business. And long term, that's what's going to really carry her to some greater financial abundance and joy in her life as well. And so you can see how, in her case, all these pieces had to come together in just the right sequence and phase. She had to put herself in the right position. And it's very hard to do this when we are fighting with this choice or this disconnect between our logical thoughts and ideas about how to solve a problem and how to move forward, and the intuitive drive that really sparks it all. There's a gap because there's a process there that most personal development, most self-help, and really most any sort of educational experience doesn't teach you. It really just teaches you, if you want to do X, there's steps to follow, go do the things. But there's more to it than that, and we lose that. We fall in that gap, and that's that place where we get stuck in fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So if you find yourself sort of stuck chasing your own tail, as they say, you can't really get anything in your life moving forward, you want to advance your career or maybe change careers, you're stuck in your business, you want to start a business for yourself, maybe that's your career change, and all the other pieces of your life are just so hard to reconcile with that, I invite you to use the same framework that I use with my client and so many of my clients to get them moving, get them out of planning and overthinking. If you want to learn more about that framework, just watch the next video and I will explain it in more detail and how you can put it to work for you.